All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Giants and their decision to bench Daniel Jones for Tommy DeVito. And I mean, I don't know if I want to say if I was a little bit surprised by it being Tommy DeVito because I wondered how likely it was that Drew Lock was going to maybe get the start instead. But then again, kind of makes sense though, just because Tommy DeVito, was there last year, and he won some games for them. So, I guess from that perspective, it does make sense. Now, I know there was a lot of talk of who made this decision. Did John Mara step in and say, "Hey, we want to start Tommy DeVito, give the fans something to be a little bit excited about?" Because I think Tommy DeVito does provide more juice than if Drew Lock is going to start towards the fan base. This provides more energy, if you want to say. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, this is it looks like this is the end of an era, and a very disappointing era, to say the least. I think Daniel Jones was given a bad rap. My friends and I like to joke around, but, on a serious note, the Giants did Daniel Jones wrong in the sense that he went through so many different head coaches and coordinators and, the injuries. Well, him getting injured is not really the Giants' fault, but, there was a lot of changes that he had to go through, and they never really surrounded him. Now they kind of have. They gave him Malik Neighbors, but he kind of regressed. It looked like he was starting to maybe come into his own after the playoff game against the Vikings, but then the game against the Eagles the week after, that changed things, and then last year was a disaster. It looked like the Giants were starting to trend up a little bit. They were ahead of schedule, but they've regressed, and he's regressed. And I think one of the biggest things is from the injuries. The neck injuries, and of course the torn ACL last year. It's a lot of different things, but I don't believe that he ever should have been a Giant. They kind of liked him because, David Cutcliffe at Duke, worked with Eli, worked with Peyton, so they thought, all right, well, Daniel Jones has got to, maybe on that same path, since he worked with him, and it just didn't happen. I could tell early on, I just never really fully bought into Daniel Jones. I tried, but I just never really saw a guy where I looked at him and said, yeah, this guy he's gonna win a Super Bowl for the Giants. I just never really saw that. And I never really saw a guy that was going to become one of the top quarterbacks in the league. And again, not all his fault, but I think wherever he ends up, we could very well see him, because look at some of the other guys that have left New York and look at how they do in the right situation. I could definitely see him going somewhere else, and then, out of nowhere, he just becomes successful. That would not surprise me. It's just not going to happen here. The Giants are an organization that they've been inept for so long. And I still do think that with this regime, they could turn it around. Because again, I do think they have good players on this team. But they need to get the quarterback right. And they play in a division right now where, you got Jalen Hurts in Philly. And I know Dak had a down year and got hurt, but you still got to deal with him and the Cowboys. The Cowboys going to bounce back next year. We'll see. And look at the Commanders and their turnaround with their young quarterback. No one really expected them to be this good for the most part. So the Giants, they got to, get back into this. And that starts with the quarterback. And I'm hoping that they do keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane around just to draft this quarterback that they're going to take. And if it doesn't work out, then they're going to be gone. And the Giants are going to have to go back to square one again. But, it's been disappointing. And unfortunately, that 2022 season set them back because that made them believe that, okay, maybe Daniel Jones, we can win with him. And these last 2 years have been really disappointing. And it's not just him. It's a collective effort, but he is a big part of the reason why the Giants are in the position that they are in right now. But the Giants also did it to themselves. They bought in. They gave him that contract. So, and you could also look at part of the reason why he got benched is because of what's in his contract, where if he gets hurt, then the Giants are going to owe him more money. They're not going to want to do that. So now he's the third string quarterback. He's not even the backup. He's the third string. But it also, and people in the media have brought up a good point. Well, why did you bring in Drew Lock, who's making $5 million, when Tommy DeVito is making a fraction of that? There was a big discussion about that. But you got to have another quarterback on the team. But you went with the guy that's making a lot less money than, Drew Lock. But then you can also say, well, Tommy DeVito knows the system. He started last year. So the thing that Giant fans are worried about now is if Tommy DeVito wins some games like he did last year and that hurts their draft positioning, well, then what's going to happen? That's why you're caught in a tough spot because, again, I think I said this yesterday. You want to see the Giants win some games just to show that they have a pulse, but also at the same time, it also hurts their draft positioning. So you're kind of just caught in the middle there. But we'll see what happens. But a lot of the teams that, have bad records, they don't necessarily need quarterbacks. Like the Patriots are going to finish with a bottom 5 pick. They don't need one. The Jaguars, they got Trevor Lawrence. The Saints have been losing, but the last 2 games they've won now with Derek Carr being back and, with the interim head coach. So, they keep winning games, and you could forget about them being, a bottom 3 team to get a top pick. They're still going to be picking in the top 10, but maybe not where the Giants are going to be picking. Maybe a little bit lower. But we'll see. But I do wish Daniel Jones best of luck after this season, and hopefully, he could find another spot. There will definitely be a team that picks him up. It wouldn't surprise me if like the Rams picked him up or something. I don't know. He has to go to a team where there's stability and, you got the right head coach in place. Because, again, look at, what Sam Darnold is doing with the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell is a very good offensive-minded head coach. Geno Smith going to Seattle and, backing up Russ for all those years. And then, he gets his opportunity with Pete Carroll as the head coach. And, he does well. And we'll talk about him in the next segment. But, it takes some time, I guess, for some of these guys. And Geno got drafted in 2013 and, played, those few years with the Jets didn't really go so well and then was a backup for a long time, but then got his opportunity with the Seahawks a few years ago when Russ got hurt. And then the following year he was the full-time starter. And then you see Sam Darnold and him bouncing around. And, now look at what he's doing. So maybe that's what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. Who knows? I think he just has to end up in the right situation. So, but this was the right move by the Giants. I know there's maybe some people that are a little conflicted about it because they're like, well, if we keep Daniel Jones in, that gives us a better chance to lose. By putting in Tommy DeVito now, it's like, okay, maybe they might back into a couple of wins. We'll see. They do play the Bucs this week, and look, I don't expect the Bucs to run away with it. But they are getting Mike Evans back. The Bucs are playing for the playoffs. They have to. They want to win these games, and especially when we talk about the Falcons who are struggling, the Bucs still have a chance to win that division, because the Falcons that's a team I just cannot figure out. So they're confusing. But the Giants, look, they're just playing for pride at this point. And I'm hoping that next year, another draft, another good offseason, hopefully, you bring in more free agents. Maybe this team is better. Maybe with the rookie quarterback, they can take, the next step forward, and we can go from there. Because again, you look at what the Commanders have done. I didn't think the Commanders were going to be good, partly because of their defense, but the defense has been better than I expected, and Jaden Daniels has been really good. Although the last couple of weeks, he's been struggling, but partly because right now he's a little banged up. So, but when will it end for the Giants? It's just been so long since that last Super Bowl, and I mean, it's not even like, they've had a couple of years where they made the playoffs, of course, but in between all that, it's just been so bad. Them and the Jets are around the same for the worst records in football. The Jets went to 2 AFC championship games. The Giants went to, a couple of Super Bowls. And, since that time, these teams are just always at the bottom. When is it going to end? And we'll talk about the Jets a little bit later with their debacle against the Colts. But, yeah, New York football, it's been rough. It's been rough. But you could say, well, they play in New Jersey. The Bills are the only team that plays in New York. And look at what they're doing. It's true. It's true. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. But let me know what you guys think about this decision by the Giants. Do you think they made the right decision by benching Daniel Jones and starting Tommy DeVito? Do you think Drew Lock should be the starter? Let me know any opinion you have on this topic here. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to click that super chat button in the chat to create any thought or comment you want to see me acknowledge throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. Also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will discuss the 49ers' loss to the Seahawks and how the 49ers are, kind of getting a little repetitive here, but they might be in trouble. So we'll get into that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.